to Deep Sleep Stories. Thank you to everyone who's been listening. If these stories help you relax or fall asleep, a short review, comment, or sharing the podcast with someone who might benefit is a simple and meaningful way to support the show so that we may continue to offer it for free. Now, take a slow, gentle breath and let's begin tonight's story.
Welcome, dear listener, to Deep Sleep Stories, where every word is softened and every pause is an invitation to rest. Tonight's gentle tale will carry you along a quiet riverbank to meet a willow tree that wakes in moonlight and whispers peace into the world. Settle into a position that feels kind to your body. Let your shoulders loosen as if a warm blanket has been draped there. Let your jaw unclench, your tongue resting easily, your forehead smoothing as though a calm hand has brushed away each lingering thought. If the day has been busy, you do not have to hold it anymore. You can set it down like a heavy bag left by the door. Breathe in slowly, as if you're sipping a comforting cup of warmth, and breathe out like a long sigh that floats into the dark and disappears. Another breath in, gentle and easy. Another breath out, letting tension melt and slide away. Now imagine a night that isn't hurried. A night that has nowhere to be. The air is cool and clean, carrying the faint scent of water and moss, of leaf and loam. Somewhere nearby, a river speaks in a quiet, steady voice, not loud enough to demand attention, only soothing enough to remind you that everything moves along in its own time. With each breath, you feel yourself drifting closer to a calm place. Your eyelids may already feel heavier, as if they've been dusted with soft sleep. Your thoughts can slow, like a lantern being turned down, until it glows with a dim, friendly light. And as you begin to relax, you can simply listen, letting the story carry you. Like a small boat floating gently downstream. There was a valley tucked between low, rounded hills where the world seemed to exhale. The hills were not dramatic or sharp. They were old and patient, covered in grasses that shimmered silver green under moonlight. In the valley's center, a river curved in a leisurely ribbon, looping and bending as if it were taking its time on purpose. Along the river's edge grew reeds and wildflowers, clusters of pale blossoms that opened at night. Their petals caught the moon's glow and held it like a secret. Fireflies drifted among them, their lights blinking slowly, as if even the insects were unhurried. The air here was soft. It was the kind of air that asked nothing of anyone, the kind of air that seemed to smooth worries and round off sharp corners of thought. Near one gentle bend in the river, where the water gathered into a wide pool, there stood a willow tree. It was an ancient willow, its trunk broad and furrowed like the surface of old stone. Its branches arched outward and downward, draping in long green curtains. During the day, the willow looked like any other tree, quiet, rooted, content. Its leaves whispered in breezes. Its boughs swayed and sang with the river's voice. Birds nested in its shelter, and small creatures napped beneath it in the shade. But at night, when the moon rose high and the valley grew still, the willow became something else. In the earliest hours of darkness, the willow did not stir. Its branches hung as they always had, the leaves resting. The river murmured, the stars watched, and everything waited. Then, very gradually, a faint glow began to collect among the willow's leaves. It was not bright, not harsh, not the kind of light that startled. It was a patient luminescence, as if moonlight had pooled there and decided to linger. The glow threaded through the hanging branches, tracing each leaf's edge with a silver line, outlining the willow as though it were being gently remembered by the night. In the wide pool beneath the tree, the water reflected that glow, turning the surface into a sheet of dark glass, scattered with soft light. The reeds at the riverbank leaned closer, their tips trembling slightly, not from fear, but from a kind of reverence. And when the glow had fully settled into the willow's canopy, the tree woke. The waking was not sudden. It was not like opening eyes quickly. It was like a long breath, drawn after a deep rest. A subtle shift rippled through the branches, traveling down the hanging curtains of leaves. The willow's limbs lifted a fraction, then relaxed again, as if stretching. A hush moved through the air. Not silence, but the sense that the world had turned its attention towards something tender. From far away, a traveler might not notice. The valley at night was full of soft movements, water flowing, insects blinking, grasses swaying. But anyone who stepped close enough could feel it. The willow was awake. The willow listened. It listened to the river's slow conversation. It listened to the small sounds of night, an owl's wing beat, a mouse rustling in the brush, the distant sigh of wind over hilltops. It listened to things that were harder to name, the quiet ache of a lonely heart, the restless turn of a mind that couldn't settle, the weight of a day that had not been kind. The willow listened to all of it without judgment. It had stood there for so long that it had learned the simplest truth. Everything that lives carries something, and everything that lives deserves gentleness. The people who lived beyond the valley did not speak of the willow often. It was not on maps. It was not a famous sight. But sometimes, in the soft hours before dawn, when someone woke from uneasy dreams and couldn't return to sleep, they would whisper about a tree by the river that could soothe the mind. They called it the waking willow, not because it was restless, but because it woke when the world needed it most. On a particular evening, when the moon was shaped like a curved pearl and thin clouds drifted lazily across the stars, a person came to the valley. Her name was Mara, and she walked as if she'd been carrying a long day for many days. Her boots were dusted with pale road dirt. Her cloak was plain, the color of twilight. She was not running from anything, and she was not chasing anything either. She simply moved forward with the steady pace of someone who had been searching for quiet. Mara had lived in a town where sounds stacked upon sounds, doors slammed, people called out, carts rattled over stones, voices rose and fell like waves, and even at night, there was always something. The creak of a sign in the wind, a dog barking, footsteps passing. The town was not cruel, but it was busy. And busyness, when it never stops, can be heavy. For some time, Mara had found herself waking in the dark, her mind bright and restless. Thoughts would circle like moths around a lantern, never landing, never letting the night remain calm. She tried warm drinks. She tried soft blankets. She tried counting breaths, counting raindrops, counting anything that could lead her back to sleep. But often the mind would not follow. One day while buying bread at the market, she overheard two older women speaking in low voices. They spoke of a valley not far away and a willow by a river bend. They said the willow woke at night. They said it listened. They said it could loosen the knots in a tired mind, not by pulling them apart, but by soaking them in calm until they unraveled on their own. Mara didn't know if she believed such a thing, but the idea of a place that breathed quietly, a place where the night itself felt safe, was enough to make her pack a small bag and set out. And so under the pearl moon, she entered the valley. The first thing she noticed was the way sound changed. In the town, noise bounced off walls and crowded streets. Here, sound seemed to drift upward into open air and dissolve. The river was the loudest voice, and even it spoke softly. The grasses moved like a whisper. The night insects hummed in a low, constant lullaby. Mara paused at the edge of the valley, taking in the shape of it. The rolling hills, like sleeping animals. The river glinting here and there. She breathed in, and for the first time in a while, her chest felt as if it had space inside it. She followed a narrow path that wound toward the river bend. The path was edged with wild mint, crushed underfoot to release a cool, sweet scent. The ground was gentle beneath her boots, springy with earth and grass. As Mara walked, the moon rose higher, its light silvering the world. The river revealed itself more clearly, its surface rippling, its shallows shimmering over smooth stones. A thin mist hovered above the water in places, as if the river was dreaming. When Mara reached the wide pool, she saw the willow. Even in the dim light, it was unmistakable. It stood like a quiet shelter, its long branches hanging down in soft arcs. The willow's presence felt different from the rest of the landscape, not dramatic, not demanding, simply steady, as if it had been waiting. Mara approached slowly, her steps careful, respectful. She didn't know why she felt the need to be gentle, but she did. Something about the willow made her want to move as quietly as possible, as if loudness might break the spell of calm. She stopped at the edge of the wide pool and watched. At first, it was simply a tree. Then as she stood there, she noticed that the leaves were gathering light in a way that was not quite ordinary. Moonlight seemed to linger among them, threading through the hanging curtains. The glow grew, delicate and unhurried. Mara's breath caught, not in fear but in wonder. She felt in her bones that she was witnessing something old and kind. The willow began to wake. The branches lifted slightly, then settled into a new posture, as if the tree had adjusted itself to look more closely at the world. The leaves shivered, and the faint glow became more even, spreading gently through the canopy. The air changed too. It felt thicker somehow, not heavy, but like the space around the willow was filled with something soft, like a warm hush. Mara took another small step forward and then another, until she was beneath the willow's hanging branches. There the world became a private room made of leaves and moonlight. The willow's branches formed a canopy overhead, and the glow painted everything in silver-green tones. The river pool reflected the light upward, so Mara's face and hands were softly illuminated, as if she were standing between two mirrors of moonlight, one above, one below. Mara sat down on the ground near the willow's trunk. The earth was cool but not uncomfortable. The roots rose slightly around her, creating natural shapes like gentle seats. She rested her palms on her knees, and for a while she did nothing at all. She simply listened to the river. In the quiet, her thoughts tried to stir, as they always did. A memory of something she should have done, a worry about something she might forget, a question about tomorrow. But each time a thought rose, the willow's presence seemed to soften it. It was as though the air itself reminded her, not now, not tonight. Tonight is for resting. The willow listened to Mara the way it listened to the river and the night. It did not pry. It did not ask questions. It simply held space, wide and calm. Slowly, Mara's breath deepened. Her shoulders dropped further. The muscles in her neck loosened. The space behind her eyes, where tension often hid, began to ease. Mara didn't know how to speak to a tree, but she found that she didn't need to. The willow wasn't waiting for words. It was offering quiet. And in that quiet, something began to happen. The willow's glow shifted in small patterns, like light moving through shallow water. The leaves trembled with a rhythm that matched Mara's breathing. It felt as if the willow was gently teaching her body a slower tempo, the way a calm song can draw a racing heart into a steadier beat. The river pool beneath them stirred, and the surface of the water began to show faint images, not sharp, not like a mirror, but like the suggestion of scenes seen through fog. Mara leaned closer without thinking, her gaze soft, unfocused. In the water she saw a meadow, bathed in early morning light. Dew sparkled on grass blades. A breeze moved through wild flowers. The scene was peaceful, and it filled her chest with a warmth she hadn't realized she was missing. Then the image shifted. Now the water showed a small cottage with a candle lit in the window. Inside, someone stirred soup in a pot. The scent of herbs and simmering broth seemed to drift into Mara's imagination, as if the vision carried fragrance as well as sight. It felt cozy, safe, like a memory of comfort. The willow was showing her not the past, not exactly, and not the future either. It was offering simple scenes of calm, places where the mind could rest without being pulled into worry. Mara's eyelids grew heavier. the image changed again. This time it showed a narrow path through a forest, lit by lanterns that hung from branches. The lantern light was soft and golden. The forest didn't feel eerie. It felt welcoming, like a hallway leading to a gentle dream. Mara blinked slowly, and her breath eased into a deeper rhythm. The willow's leaves whispered overhead. They were not speaking words, but the sound carried meaning. It sounded like reassurance, like the quiet voice of a friend saying, "You're safe. You can let go." The longer Mara sat there, the less she felt the need to hold her thoughts tightly. They began to drift away, like leaves floating downriver. She didn't have to force them. She didn't have to chase them. The willow's calm made it easy to release them. In time, Mara lay back on the earth, using her rolled cloak as a pillow. Above her, the willow's curtains of leaves swayed gently. The glow made the underside of each leaf shine like a small, soft star. The river continued its steady song. Somewhere nearby, a nightbird called once, then settled again. The valley held everything in its arms. As Mara rested, the willow's wakefulness deepened. It was not like a creature opening its eyes wider. It was like a place becoming more fully itself. The tree's presence seemed to reach outward, not in a dramatic wave, but in a slow expansion, like warmth spreading through a room. The willow's glow touched the grasses, the reeds, the stones by the river's edge. It drifted across the water's surface and into the air like faint mist, and with that glow came something else. Dream seeds. They were tiny, nearly invisible at first, like specks of light caught in a sunbeam. The willow released them from its leaves, letting them float downward. Each seed held a softness, a hint of comfort, a small promise of rest. They drifted slowly, as if the air itself was thickened with peace. Some landed on the river and dissolved into ripples. Some settled in the grass. Some floated toward Mara, hovering above her like slow fireflies. When a dream seed touched her forehead, it melted like a snowflake on warm skin, cool for an instant, then gone, leaving behind a feeling of ease. Mara's brow smoothed further, as if the seed had brushed away the last crease of tension. Another dream seed touched her chest, and Mara felt her breathing deepen again, as though her lungs had remembered how to be calm. The willow was not casting a spell in the way stories often describe. No sudden enchantment, no dramatic transformation. It was doing something simpler and kinder. It was helping a tired mind remember how to drift. Mara's thoughts became fewer. The ones that remained softened at the edges. Instead of words, her mind began to form gentle shapes. The curve of the moon, the sway of willow branches, the feel of earth beneath her back. The river's sound grew more distant, not because it had changed, but because Mara was sinking into that place between waking and sleep, where sounds become part of the dream rather than something to listen to. The willow remained awake, watching over her. It had watched over many travelers. Long ago, when the valley was younger, a child had wandered here after a storm. The child had been frightened by thunder, by the way the sky had cracked open. The willow had woken then too, releasing dream seeds and calming light. The child had fallen asleep beneath its branches and woken at dawn with laughter in their eyes. Another time a farmer had come, worried about crops and rain and all the things that burden those who care for the earth. He had sat with his back to the willow's trunk, and the willow had listened. The farmer had not spoken aloud, but the willow had heard the tightness in his breath, the weight in his posture. It had released dream seeds until the farmer's shoulders loosened. He'd gone home with steps that felt lighter. Once, a musician had arrived with hands that trembled from too many performances, too much noise. The willow had woken, and its leaves had whispered in rhythm like a slow lullaby. The musician had rested beneath its branches, and later wrote a song that sounded like moonlight on water. The willow did not keep trophies of these moments. It did not collect praise. It simply did what it had always done. It woke, it listened, it offered calm. Tonight, it offered calm to Mara. As Mara drifted, the visions in the river pool became gentler still. They faded from distinct scenes into simple sensations. The warmth of a hearth, the softness of a blanket, the comfort of familiar footsteps in a quiet hallway. Mara's mind accepted these offerings without effort. Her body grew heavier, as though it were settling into the earth, becoming part of the valley's stillness. The willow's branches swayed. A faint breeze came from the hills, cool and clean. It moved through the willow's leaves, like fingers combing through hair. The leaves shivered, and more dream seeds fell, floating like slow snow. The valley itself seemed to breathe with Mara. In the distance, the hills were dark shapes against the star-filled sky. The stars did not sparkle sharply. They glowed softly like candlelight seen through thin paper. The moon watched quietly, content to shine, without needing attention. Time passed in the gentle way it does at night, when no one is counting it. Mara's breathing became deep and steady. Her hands, which had been curled slightly with tension, relaxed and opened. Her fingers rested loosely against her cloak. Her legs, which had carried her from the busy town into the valley, released their fatigue. Her feet grew warm despite the cool air, as if the earth itself was offering comfort. The willow listened to the small shifts in her body. It listened to the way her heart slowed. It listened to the way her mind loosened its grip. And as Mara approached sleep, the willow did something else. It leaned into its oldest gift. In the quiet center of its trunk, where the heartwood held the memory of countless seasons, the willow carried a pool of stillness deeper than any river. It was not emptiness. It was a gentle fullness, like the calm that comes after a good cry, or the peace that settles when a home is finally quiet at night. The willow let a little of that stillness flow outward. It moved through the bark and into the air as a feeling rather than a sound. It wrapped around Mara like a shawl. It didn't press. It didn't cling. It simply surrounded her, with the sense that everything was all right, even if nothing was perfect, even if the world was still complicated somewhere beyond the hills. Here in this circle of moonlight and leaves, it was enough to rest. Mara's lips parted slightly as she exhaled, a long, slow breath that seemed to carry away the last of her day. The muscles around her eyes softened and her eyelids stopped fluttering. Her face became smooth and quiet, as if it had forgotten how to worry. Above her, the willow's glow dimmed a fraction, not because it was fading, but because it was matching her descent into deeper calm. The light remained, but it became more subtle, more internal, like a lantern turned low in a sleeping room. The dream seeds continued to drift, fewer now, as if the willow sensed that Mara had received enough. The river flowed on, steady and patient. A soft mist rose from the water and moved beneath the willow's branches, curling around the roots and spreading across the ground. It looked like a blanket of pale silk. It carried coolness, but also comfort, the way fresh sheets feel when you first slip into bed. Mara's breathing stayed deep. In her mind, the last images were simple. A warm cup held between hands, the sound of rain on a roof, a gentle voice humming in another room. And then, without any clear moment of crossing, Mara entered sleep. The willow remained awake a little longer, as if standing guard at the edge of her dreams. Its branches swayed in slow motion. Its leaves shimmered faintly. It listened to the valley. It listened to Mara. It listened to the quiet. And it was satisfied. Beyond the willow's glow, the valley was still. The hills held their silence. The grasses lay down under the weight of dew. The insects humming softened into a nearly imperceptible lull. The moon drifted a little higher, then began its slow arc toward the west. The willow, feeling the night's deepening calm, began to settle. Its branches lowered slightly, returning to their resting posture. The glow in its leaves dimmed further until it was just a suggestion, a soft silver tucked into the canopy, like starlight caught in green. The dream seeds stopped falling. The river pool beneath the willow became a simple mirror again, reflecting moon and leaf and sky. The visions faded entirely, leaving only the gentle ripple of water and the soft sheen of night. The willow was still awake, but only barely, the way someone might be aware in the quiet moments before sleep, when the world is blurred and peaceful. It listened once more, and what it heard pleased it. Mara's steady breath, the sound of deep rest. So the willow let go. Not abruptly, not completely, but in the gentle way that everything in the valley did. It allowed its awareness to sink back into its roots, down into the earth where cool darkness held it like a cradle. The last of its glow became a faint shimmer, then a calm shadow among shadows. The valley returned to its ordinary night, quiet and safe. Mara slept beneath the willow's branches, her body heavy with comfort, her mind drifting in slow, peaceful currents. The river continued to flow as it always had, carrying moonlight downstream. The hills remained still, like guardians around the valley, and the night stretched on wide and tender, giving permission for everything to rest. Now the story begins to soften, like a blanket pulled up a little higher. The willow is quiet. The river is calm. The valley is safe. If any thoughts are still moving through your mind, they can slow down now. They can become distant, like lights far away on a quiet road. You don't need to follow them. You can let them pass. Breathe in gently. Breathe out slowly. Feel the weight of your body supported. Feel your muscles loosening one by one, as if each part of you is being reminded that it can relax. Your shoulders, your arms, your hands, your chest, your belly, your legs, your feet. Everything can become heavy in the best way. The willow's leaves sway in your imagination, slow and steady. The river sings its soft song. The moonlight is smooth and pale. With every breath you drift deeper. There is nothing you need to do. Nothing you need to solve. No place you need to go. Just this calm. Just this quiet. Good night, dear traveler. Sleep well.